The next question that we have, Brother Munib, and frankly, I'm reading Brother Munib's question, but this question has been asked by half a dozen people in the last few weeks, is saying that during the lockdown, in order to entertain the children, to pass the time, he and his family are playing board games. And sometimes those games involve dice. And he says he has come across a fatwa. He mentions the website name, but we shall not mention it. It is a very popular website that answers Q&A about Islam. And my advice or suggestion is that it might have some good, but really people should stick with the scholars of their own lands or countries, even if it's not any, but find people within your own locality and ask them. Sometimes these websites are based from one land and there's a lot of cultural connotation that is not suitable for other lands. Nonetheless, he is saying he found a fatwa from this particular website that is saying that it is haram to play board games with one's family that have dice in them because there's a hadith that forbids this. So he's asking this question.
وما أرسلنا من قبلك إلا رجالا نوحي إليهم فاسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون.
So this response, and again I remind the viewers that this is the shortened version. I know that this is going to, as usual, be, you're going to have refutations and people are going to have other opinions, but this is the reality of fiqh, subhanAllah. I'm not the first to say what I'm about to say. Nonetheless, this is the shortened response. Yes, there is a hadith that forbids something called nardashir, that the Prophet ﷺ said, hadith is in Sahih Muslim, whoever plays with nardashir, it is as if he has dipped his hands in pig's blood and in pig's flesh. Okay, so this is a hadith that is very explicit. Now, there's a number of issues involved over here. What exactly is nardashir? And is it applicable to the game or to the dice? Because again, the issue comes, how do you interpret this word here? The word nardashir is a Persian word, and it is actually a reference to the game that has now evolved into backgammon. There is a rudimentary version of backgammon back then that the Persians had invented. Nard dashir is a Persian word, and they had this game of backgammon that they would gamble with. And so backgammon, to this day, it is sometimes played as something that people, bet their money on, and the winner basically, takes it all. So nard dashir primarily applies to backgammon. Now there are some versions or some reports that might reference the dice as well, but the more authentic version, Sahih Muslim, says nard dashir, and nard dashir is primarily applied for the game of backgammon. Now some have said that the prohibition is to the dice itself, and there is some basis that how do you separate the game? It is all put together. As well, there are some reports about the game of chess. Now there's nothing authentic from the Prophet ﷺ about chess, shatranj, but there are a number of reports from the Sahaba and Tabi'un that some of them disapproved of chess somewhat rather harshly, and it is also reported, by the way, that some of them did not disapprove of chess. If you look up Sunan al-Bayhaqi, one of the great books of hadith, there is an entire chapter about what people have said regarding chess, and you will find a number of reports that are very harsh. Ali ibn Abi Talib, for example, he basically said, I wish I could throw this board game onto your face. Have you been created to do this? He found a group of people all playing chess, basically surrounding a match and whatnot. He became irritated, radiallahu anhu. And so you have some very strict, statements from the Sahaba and Tabi'un. But you also have on the other side, some of the Tabi'un and Tabi'un, whom it is authentically narrated that they would actually play chess. And of them, Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, Muhammad ibn Sirin and Hisham ibn Urwa, they would play chess, in private. It means it's not something they would publicize. It's not something you do in front of everybody, but with your family or in the privacy of the room, and they would just go and, just a little bit of time to pass to play chess. And Ibn Abdul Barr, he says in his Tamheed, that it is reported by Ikrimah and Ash-Sha'bi that they would play with the nard. And Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib was asked about playing with the nardashir, and Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, the great tabi'i, the famous tabi'i, he said, if there is no money or gambling involved, then there is no problem with it. Now, these are some reports from these great tabi'un and tabi'un. I want you to know, this is my short response, so I'm not going into detail. You will find more reports from the Sahaba, tabi'un, tabi'un that are disapproving. So there's no question, I'm not trying to hide that. But you want a response, I'm going to give you a simple response. You will find a longer list of people who disliked it, but these are great scholars who basically said it's okay with certain conditions. And the position that I'm advocating is that we need to be a little bit more pragmatic and take a look at the broader picture. Those respected and great ulama, some of them are my teachers and I respect them immensely. Those that say that all types of games and cards and board games and dice and everything is haram, I fully understand, I fully sympathize, because in their minds they want the ummah to reach the highest level. And the fact of the matter, as Ali radiallahu anhu said, were you created to do this? No, you were not created to spend hours and hours, playing board games and doing chess and whatnot. We have a higher purpose. But when you look at the status of the ummah, this is something that the books of fiqh called يعني ما تعمد به البلوى, that everybody is doing it now. Everyone is doing it. So for us to adopt the strictest position essentially means nobody cares what we say, and it's as if you are speaking to a wall, because you can say whatever you want. And with my utmost respect, the very people who are giving this fatwa, I am, because I know the realities, their own families, their own children, maybe even they themselves cannot live up to this fatwa perfectly. And when that is the case, then really you need to take a step back, because the Sharia is never going to be impractical. The Sharia is always applied. And if this is the case, and you also realize that we're living at a time and a place where, again, let us be frank here, there are far bigger problems that are of our children than them sitting down to play a board game, than them sitting down to play chess. The stuff that they're watching on television, a'udhu billah, the Netflix that they're watching, a'udhu billah, the online entertainment and the whatever, TikTok, all of these things out there, right? And so you're going to come and say, oh, if a father and mother and the children sit down and they play Ludo, or they play, cards, or they play a game of chess or whatever amongst themselves just to pass the time, that is haram and forbidden and sinful in the eyes of Allah. There is no evidence from the Quran and Sunnah to make that sinful at all. Yes, there's a hadith that talks about backgammon, but the question is the prohibition because of the gambling, which is what I am saying and what these tabi'un said, or is it just any type of board game and any type of game involving dice and whatnot? And if you look at it really, it is very, to me at least, it is very obvious that the fatwa that we need to give to the people is that, look, there is no question, so I'm being precise here, so pay attention to this. There is no question that we have a higher purpose in life than just to spend hours and hours playing video games or watching TV or doing something of this nature. And not all of these things I mentioned are at the same level. Some of them are sinful in what we see or what we hear. Some of them are, mubah, permissible. But the mubah, which is permissible, when it is done too much, it becomes makruh, and when it leads to haram, it becomes haram, right? So even the mubah, it is like salt, you add it to the food. And so my position, the fatwa I'm going to give you, is that all of these board games and chess and the dice that is used for non-gambling. As for gambling, by unanimous consensus, when you put money, and there are people that are, we're talking about real money, monopoly is not real money, right? So we're talking about when you put money and people are betting and they have games and whatnot, there is no question that any type of game that involves money, actual money, and is based upon the luck of the draw or the luck of the cards or the luck of the dice, that is absolutely haram. There should be no two opinions about that. As for when there is no gambling involved, then my suggestion, my advice is that family should understand that indeed we do have a higher purpose, and that we have a problem across the board of wasting too much time in entertainment, in movies, in all that we do. So it's not just the dice and the games, it is overall we are killing time, and we have not been created to kill time. We have been created to be productive with our time. Nonetheless, if somebody, you cannot continuously 24 hours a day do something that is absolutely productive. The mind needs to take a break. The body needs to take a break. Your children cannot be expected to be, constantly, they're gonna play, they're gonna do what they're going to do. And therefore, If we use this like salt, just a little bit, once in a while, and we sit down, and for the adults especially, for the parents especially, my advice to you all is when you sit down with your children to play these games, your niyyah should be not the game, but family time. Your niyyah should be that I want to come closer to my children, my spouse, my kids. I want to teach them manners. What should you say? What should you do? Even as you play a game, right? You can bring in some benefits, some fawaid, rather than using vulgarities, say something beneficial, remind them of their past, their heritage, family history, teach them something that is beneficial, even as of this dunya. So the goal should not be the game. The goal should be quality time with the family, and the game is an excuse for the kids to come because they don't want to listen to you or they don't want to do. So the goal is basically, and when you make it that niyyah, insha'Allah ta'ala, I actually think it's not only just mubah, you might even be rewarded if you actually intend to do something productive and useful with your family, teach them something of benefit. Then as you sit down with them and you play a board game or whatnot, inshallah it might even be an act of worship. At the very least we can say it is mubah, but a number of points. First and foremost, this should not take up the most of your time or day. And as you grow older, you need to cut back. And I speak now especially to the young men. Oh, young men in college, you need to stop playing your PS4s and Xboxes, 10 hours a day. That's not going to benefit you. You're no longer 5 years old or 10 years old. When you get to your 30s, what are you doing half the time playing this game? No, definitely at that stage, you need to cut back and be reasonable. I understand a little bit of, all of us need a bit of a break. We all have different breaks. Some people take breaks reading esoteric books of history, but that's besides the point. Some people like to take these types of breaks. I understand. It is in and of itself mubah, but do not make it a bulk of your time. What is reasonable? It varies from person to person. As well, make sure that you do not do anything haram within, because there are some not board games, well maybe there are some, but there are some video games that have vulgarities in them, or where you're expected to do blatant haram. And parents, it is your job to, so here's the point, those people who say it's haram to play board games, okay, you say that, what are the kids going to do? The parents think it's haram. No child is going to listen to this fatwa. They're going to be in their rooms, watching their TikToks, doing their PS4 games and whatnot. And so again, isn't it better to take the children out of their private bedrooms, bring them to the living room with the parents, and instead of them watching what they shouldn't do, instead of them playing games where the characters are doing things that are indecent or violent or gory, because that's the alternative, right? The parents are going to be following a fatwa way up there. The children are not going to be doing that. So as you're aware, if you listen to me, I don't believe in abstract fatwas. Fatwas have to benefit the ummah. We have to teach and preach at the level of the ummah. And to make haram these types of things, I really think that it is harmful to the ummah to be this strict. I understand if we're talking to a group of mashallah huffaz in the madrasa, full-time students of Islamic ilm, for sure for them we can be a little bit stricter and say, hey guys, why are you doing something of this nature? Do something more productive. Don't spend hours and hours. But to give a blanket fatwa of this nature that it is haram, all types of board games or all types of amusements are haram, no, it is like salt. You do it a little bit, and the goal should be family time. The niyyah should be spending quality time, and also playing a board game with the children is infinitely better than the children being in their rooms and doing the games or watching the movies that they should not be doing. So it is better to do this. It is definitely the lesser of the two evils, and therefore insha'Allah ta'ala there is no sin on you whatsoever if these conditions are met. And again, as the kids grow older, also try to do this less and less and do something more productive more and more. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.
يا من أجبت دعاء نوح فانتصر وحملته في فلكك المشحون يا من أحال النار حول خليله روحا وريحانا بقولك كن